right, another week, another episode. Welcome to Shovick Sports. I'm Cory,
And I'm Austin.
and we have a special guest with us today. This is truly an honor. We're excited to have him on here. You may follow him on Instagram at the Couch Coach Live. Chris, thank you for joining us tonight.
No problem, fellas. Thank you guys for the invite. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so I've been kind of like scouring through some of your content, and I've been following you on Instagram for a little while now. One of the things that we talked about the other night was kind of our podcasting journey and how and why we kind of started doing a sports podcast as brothers and kind of doing some of that stuff. So why don't you give our audience and our listeners maybe a little background in what you do and maybe why you got into sports podcasting?
Okay. It's one of those things where I think when you're young, it's something that you've always kind of wanted to do, but you just don't know how you're going to get there. Obviously, when I first started off, high school years, I always thought I was gonna, be a basketball player. At the time, I was probably maybe more fast, 6. I was thinking, my athletic career is gonna flourish. I'm gonna, as the kids say, I'm gonna have one summer, 1 year where I'm gonna grow to be like 6 feet tall. That didn't happen. So, like, I'm pretty much my athletic aspirations pretty much ended probably like 11th, 12th grade of my high school years. So, and it's funny because even in those formative years of high school, I got one of my high school friends, shout out to my one of my high school friends, Quentin. He gave me the nickname Couch Coach because one day we were just randomly talking on the phone, out playing Madden, and he's like, and I'm, you yell at guys like, "Oh, why you didn't make the catch? This, that, third, go, be open, And he's like, "Man, why you acting like a couch coach?" I'm like, okay, that got a ring to it. And fast forward, I got an opportunity to be in a broadcast school in 2011. Did that. Then, then 2 years later, well, not 2 years later. After that, I had opportunity to be like a sports guy on 2 other shows. And just did like a sports segment, and then fast forward to July 2014. That's when the birth of Couch Coach Live. And funny thing about it, it was created on a dinner napkin. Essentially, it was while I was waiting for food. This is during the 2014 the World Cup. So I'm just thinking to myself, okay, I wanted to create a show. I had 3 names. It was like Sports Weekly. I don't know what the second one, but then the other one was Couch Coach Live. I did like a poll. Only 3 people participated in the poll, and it was like 2-1. So I was like, you know what? That's going to be unanimous. And then from there, Couch Coach Live got started. 2017, I have met my current and my current co-host that's been with me since 2017. My guy, Deshaun Morgan, a.k.a. Maui. He's been our mainstay as far as our co-host since 2017. Then, we kind of transitioned because at the time, back in those days, we did internet radio, and now how it all morphed now. And then 2020 came, and we had to do like the pivot, so we was able to do it like on a platform just like this, and just do it weekly. Ever since pretty much in 2020, since the pandemic, and then essentially in 2022, that's when pretty much as far as the being credentialed and going to sporting events and covering games really pretty much kind of took off. So it's just one of those things where, I always think to myself like a dinner napkin idea, and it's morphing to this, and and even to and then having the community of guys like yourself, as far as in the podcast community I've met as well. So when I created this in July 2014, would I ever think 11 years later that all this stuff kind of came into fruition? No, but but I'm enjoying the ride.
Yeah, no, and again, it's always fun to hear other people's kind of journeys, right? Like we're just 2 random guys that kind of like you. We played sports growing up, but then at the time, there's a time where right? Like there's just a time where, hey, I'll pick up the sticks on the PS5. That's about as athletic as it's going to get for it. But at the same time, I work in youth sports for my job, right? So there's always been a love and wanting to be a part of the sports community. And then we had talked about never really listened to podcasts. Started listening to New Heights, the Kelsey brothers, and I was like, well, we love sports. We know what we're doing. Why not? Like, you never know. And since then, we're at a year, um, a little over a year doing this, and the people that we've been able to interact with, people that we've been able to get on the show, like you, um, this has been crazier than we could have even imagined. Right? It's just one of those things where we just want to talk sports. We want to get other people's perspectives about sports. We've had people on from Hawaii. We've had people all over, America join our show, and it's awesome to see kind of the perspectives of others and what they're doing in their journey. So that's one of the things that I'm going to start asking our guests when they're on here is what made you want to do this and what, is kind of your why. So, bro, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, it's definitely wild. Your selling point to me was like, let's just talk sports. Like we do it anyways, so let's just see what can happen. I mean, maybe not 100% of our conversations we've had throughout our entire life are somewhat sports. So a selling point of like, let's just continue doing that and see where it goes, sold me. But even after just a little over the year, what he said, just the people we're able to meet, kind of the different views and opinions and journeys, like it's been way more than we could have ever even dreamed of already. So it's been wonderful. And, hearing your journey, it's like, not only like, did I kind of just start on that napkin for you, but like, it took some time, right? Like you stuck with it. It's sports. You love it. So it's something that like, you're just not going to give up on. And I don't know, kind of have to persevere and like stay determined and just stick with it and see where you go. And I don't know, it's been fun so far. And I'm excited to see where we do end up.
I do have a question with the three people that voted for your. Like, were they people you knew, or was this just like people, just random people that maybe were like, "Hey, I see a poll, I'm going to go ahead and vote for it"?
I'm going on the assumption I think it's probably a mixture of both. Probably more like strangers in a sense because, yeah, but the three, I was like that convinced me. Okay, two out of one. I'm like, okay, we'll roll with that.
Yeah. So, and again, in some of your stuff that I was looking at, the UFL is kind of something that stood out on your pages that when I was looking. We live in St. Louis, so obviously the Battlehawks are here. We haven't had a chance to get to a game, but we do know our neighbors go often. St. Louis is obviously, there's a mixed bag. Is St. Louis a football community? Is St. Louis, do they deserve an NFL team? I'm on the boat. We've only lived here 4.5 years. I do think St. Louis is a sports community. They may not show it at certain times, but when you look back and what the Rams were doing, the Rams didn't really give them a reason to want to participate, right? Like now you look at the standing, or you look at the stadium during Battlehawks games, and with your background, and you're well aware of what St. Louis has been able to do with the Battlehawks. So, kind of give us your rundown of the UFL and maybe some high points for you doing that.
And what's funny is my DC Defenders head to St. Louis on Sunday, and I think that's going to be such a great matchup. And like you say, St. Louis deserves it. I mean, you think to yourself, the numbers were 32,000 on Sunday for the game. So you think to yourself, for them to have the type of amount at a spring football game, that to me shows me that yes, this is a NFL city. It was an NFL city. Don't want to get into like the politics of it and the state politics of it all, but this team deserves to have an NFL franchise, and it's sad that it had to come to that way. But the USFL, a lot has happened. Obviously, you look at just even from a coaching standpoint. Obviously, you looked at even with DC Defenders, Reggie Barlow leaves. He goes to Tennessee State. Ken Wisenhunt he went on a brief leave of absence, but he is back for Memphis Showboats. You just look at even, we talk about the undefeated teams in there. We talked about St. Louis, what they're doing, DC as well, and then also what Arlington is doing. So who'd have thought that 3 XFL division teams are currently undefeated? It's been some great football. If you love football, I know if you were, especially following the DC Defenders, how I do, they were tough, grinded out games. Obviously, the first game against Birmingham and 3-time champions. You win that game 17 to what was it? 18
I think
to
it was
11.
17-12. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Sunday night was 17 to 12 against Memphis. And it's one of those where, and that's kind of, I think, the indicative kind of how I think the DC Defenders are going to be this whole entire year, where they're going to just gut out victories. It may not be the prettiest of football, but, if you're a fan of, good defense, I think the DC Defenders will kind of fit that bill. But even looking at even down the bottom of it, you look at like how San Antonio and Houston, two teams in Texas, they're 0-2 on the season. You see Birmingham kind of get back to their winning ways last week. So you look, it's going to be really interesting how this season going to play out. And I definitely think that Sunday game against you guys in St. Louis, I think that's going to be a huge game on Sunday for sure.
Yeah, and it's one of those where people I've talked to and I work with that have been to the Dome, they say, yeah, it's 32,000, but when you're, it's not supposed to be like that, right? For a league like this, that's what it is. But it's, we've had a chance to watch some of the games, and again, so kind of with your background and you kind of following it more than some, how do you think it benefits these players getting ready for their NFL dream, right? Because we've seen it. We've seen Turpin, who's with the Cowboys. I'm a Broncos fan. We got DeAndre Tillman out of that league as well. There's some good talent in this league, and you're seeing the benefits of it. It's just, can they keep it going and at the level that, continues to push these guys to maybe get that spot in the NFL?
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful thing about this league. This league is pretty much, it's an opportunity for you to go to the next level. This is an opportunity for to have some good film on you for the spring, and then maybe you get invited to a camp this summer. And I think that's kind of the beauty of this league, and it's transparent. It's like we all know this isn't like a situation where we know why you're here. We know that you're here, so you go to the next level. We all know that, especially considering the fact just the shortening of the season. Obviously, you got 10-week seasons. Mm-hmm. We know you're not essentially going to be here for off-season workout, off-season conditions, because we essentially want you to be on the NFL roster, in our quote-unquote off-season. And I like it, just the fact of just being able to see, especially from quarterbacks that I liked in college, and I also had some glimpses in NFL. Even our guy Jordan Tamu, what he's doing with DC, I definitely like Bryce Perkins out of Michigan. He was in my backyard in Charlottesville at UVA, so it was good to kind of see like his game. Obviously he had a cup of coffee in the NFL, but obviously now you get to see him more, more of a on a bigger scale. And then also like Kellen Mond, I think he's another one where Mike Zimmer don't like him, but I think he's okay kind of. I think he's an okay quarterback. I definitely thought, he could be someone I think could be on the NFL roster. But it's always good to see guys, even like a guy like a DeAndre Baker for DC cornerback, just guys that you've seen like in the pros and kind of make their way here. I think it's just one of those where if you are, I think to me it's a perfect. If I want to say it like, obviously the NFL like the main course. This is like a good hearty snack in the spring. Obviously, we still got stuff going on in the NFL transaction wise. We got the draft coming up. But if you're like kind of yearning for like some actual field play, this fits the bill for me, for everyone. If you have that desire of, a spring football meshed with the NFL offseason stuff. So I think it's a perfect kind of blending of the two.
Yeah, and there's even a couple guys that play here in St. Louis that we were kind of curious on, as far as, like Hakeem Butler, the receiver. I would have thought he would get a chance in the NFL. They've had a couple guys who have moved on. Obviously, A.J. McCarron was the quarterback here for a little bit, who's now back in the NFL after coming back over from the NFL. So, again, people are watching, right? It's working. Maybe not at the rate that some of these guys want to do, but at the end of the day, you still got to keep working, keep grinding. Is there someone to maybe keep our eye on this season as someone who maybe stands out above the rest that may be that next Turpin who can maybe surprise some people and be successful at the next level.
And I think you mentioned it. I thought Hakeem Butler, he had a great performance against the DC Defenders last year when they came into DC and beat us. Well, the Defenders, not us, but you know what I mean. Yeah, then even you looked at even in the championship game against San Antonio last year. Well, that's the conference championship game where Wade Phillips was like, "Hey, I'm gonna get some guys, some put some ads on you, and how you go into the NFL potentially, or at least kind of introduce you to some NFL guys as far as your play." But I definitely thought he was gonna be someone that I definitely thought would have been on the NFL roster, for sure, because he balled out. Yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned Wade Phillips. Let's talk about this list of coaches that are in this league, right? Like these guys have like Wade Phillips is obviously a Super Bowl coach, winning coach. He was Denver's defensive coordinator with the no-fly zone. Here we have Anthony Beck, who's also a former player who was a pretty good tight end in his day. His son's actually balling out in Iowa State right now, who could be maybe a sleeper pick here in the next couple of years in the NFL as far as that goes. How do you think the coaches here stack up, and is this the reason maybe why it's more appealing and players are more likely to trust this maybe league?
Yeah, I think so for sure. Like you said, you talked about Beck. I think he's a heck of a coach. You look at what you doing. Ken Whisenhunt. He's had some experience coaching wise. Who else you had? Bob Stoops. He's another one that's well respected in here. Skip Holtz. He's a great coach as well. He's one. He's been at multiple levels. Yeah, and I think when you get that type of coaching, that's kind of one of the things where, like we said, we know the ultimate goal is to get you to the next level, and these coaches can get you to that next level. Like they have proven that, hey, I could say, hey, well, if I could go to a coach's room and ask him what does it takes to get me to the next level, they know exactly how to get there. And obviously, even we talked about as far as even the college level coaches like a Stoops and a Skip Holtz, but they have bred NFL type of players in their coaching days in college. So yeah, it's like a great pool of coaches that you have here in the UFL for sure.
Let's since we know you're in a Washington fan, so let's ask about those Commanders. Kind of, we actually were really high on the Commanders in our preseason episodes last year. We still kind of thought they were a year away, but we did kind of say, hey, if Jaden Daniels ends up being what we think he can be with Cliff Kingsbury, this team could be sneaky good in a division that, is still kind of top heavy with, the Cowboys. You never know what's going to be with the Cowboys and the Giants. Well, we won't even waste too much time on the Giants and what they're trying to do. So kind of give us your season recap of what the Commanders were able to do and maybe the expectations that Dan Quinn's been able to set heading into year 2 with those guys.
It was a great year. It was a year like no other. It's been a year. We haven't had a year like that since 1991. Fantastic year. I thought they were gonna. The worst case scenario, I thought they were going to be kind of like. Well, the best case scenario, I thought they were going to be a wild card team, maybe like a 10-7, 11-6 teetering, and that was more like the high expectations. And they exceeded my expectations with being 12-5. You just look at the naturalization of Jaden Daniels, even from I think even in the game against Tampa, he showed some flashes, even though he really didn't, as far as completing wise, he had like 80-something yards rushing. And I feel like every week he started figuring it out. I think his coming out to me in the beginning was that Monday Night Football game against Cincinnati. I definitely didn't think, we'd come out like that. And you just look at just all of, what he has done. Obviously, the Hail Mary, what he's done there, that was such a great play. And you showed kind of, I always looked at that Bears game was kind of like the turning point for both teams. Obviously, the Bears coming in that game, they were 4-2. I definitely thought they were going to be a team, and then they end up losing, 12 or 11 straight. Mm-hmm. And then you see what happened here with Washington. And you just look at obviously, and they come with you had some heartbreaking losses. Obviously, the 1-point loss to, really first off, Thursday Night Football game against Philly, and then, well, really it was the Pittsburgh game first. We lost by a point there. Then go to Philly and lose, and then the next week, well, 10 days later, we lose to the Dallas Cowboys. So obviously you think, oh gosh, it's but to revert back. And then lo and behold, they win their last 5 final games. And it's weird because, I haven't gone to FedEx/Northwest Stadium in years. I decided to go to the game against the Titans on December 1st. And it was just such a different it was like night and day. I remember I was telling one of my friends, you go to FedEx, well, at the time it was FedEx. You used to go there, it felt like a funeral. It really felt like, okay, you knew, like, you hoping that, we win, but it's going to be doom and gloom, and it's just going to be, you're going to waste your time. But, that, and then just the fact of carrying over to, obviously in that game, the season finale against Dallas, Marcus Mariota does his thing, and he had some good flashes definitely in that Carolina game. So, those, and it is the culture of it, even in those games where most times, in most cases, those blowout wins against Cleveland, the blowout win against Arizona, the blowout against Carolina. Usually, in most cases, those would have been like close games that we could have potentially lost or had it. So I love that. And then obviously the playoffs. I think obviously, this is the first time we won a playoff game since 2006. And I coined the phrase, hey, there are freshmen in college that have never seen the Washington Commanders win a playoff game. And lo and behold, they won it. And then you go to Detroit. Everybody was like, oh yeah, y'all gonna lose, you're gonna lose. And I remember I said I think it was 30, I think I had 42 to like 31 on one of the shows I did like 2 nights before. And I called it, and everybody thought I was crazy. And I'm like, it's just having that belief. And then obviously, the downfall of it all, obviously losing the NFC Championship to Philly. And even with that, I can find, somewhat, not to be hyperbolic, but kind of have a little solace in the fact that, hey, it was just the turnovers. If we cleaned it up, we could have won this football game. It wasn't like a situation where Jay Daniels didn't play. He played well. He had, he played well enough, I think, to win the game. But obviously those turnovers wreaked havoc for us. And I mean, it's, Dan Quinn has just created such a great great locker room here, and you can just tell, like, it's just like night and day, and it's just amazing how it boils. It's not just the players; it's the ownership upstairs. Upstairs matters, and you can definitely tell in this team. And I think the expectation for the team is just continue to have those winning ways. I'm gonna temper my expectations. I don't necessarily think we would, because we all know, like, when you're in the NFC Championship game, that might be like a low, because I know a lot of people the previous year probably thought Detroit and San Francisco was going to be back at it again, and and you hope that happens. But I think realistic, long as this team is still a double-digit win team, and hopefully we can have a home playoff game this year, and hey, we'll see. I mean, maybe maybe playing in San Francisco in the second week of February is in our cards next year. But hey, if it can happen, it can happen. Why not us?
Yeah,
we shall see.
I think it's an easy season recap for the Commanders. I think kind of maybe not what a lot of people outside of your area might think of, but I think the subtraction of Dan Snyder, that alone is the reason that team won. Like, it helps you got new coaching and your quarterback and everything, but like the addition by subtraction, like that whole situation got better once he was out. Plain and simple. That's why it was such a quick turnaround. You got so much better just by kind of getting rid of that. So it's always determined by players on the field, but I think you nailed it when you said, like what you have upstairs and like in your front office and stuff, that matters to the owners, everyone. And people outside of your area may not realize how bad it was with him, but it was pretty bad. So I think that was a really good first step, and you kind of you've seen what's come of just that. Like, finally get good staff, the staff who knows how to get good players, and like just the trickle down effects from just getting rid of that one person, I think was tremendous. And I think they're set up. This isn't just a 1 year run from them. They're set up 5, 10, 15 years at least to just be successful. And it's better than the Eagles and Cowboys. So I'm going to have no complaints.
And we actually were even sitting there for the conference championship games, and we were actually looking at scenarios where, Washington may actually be able to do this against Philadelphia. They obviously in the end it was a little too much, and I don't even think it was just based on how bad they played. It was just Philadelphia was just a really good team in the postseason. They kind of just ran up against the buzzsaw of the defense as far as Philadelphia goes. But our cousin's a huge Washington fan, so we tend to follow Washington rather closely, just based on it's history, right? There's a lot of history there. It's RG3 and even back Doug Williams,
Champ Bailey
before Denver grabbed him for Quentin Portis. But it's still it's fun to see them kind of on the up. I think it's good for the football when everybody can be competitive, right? Like for years, and again, I'm not a fan. You've obviously lived through those down years, but we've experienced it as a Chiefs fan. He's experienced it as a Broncos fan. I've been living in the dumpsters up until last year with Bo Nix. So it's nice to see a little bit of a revival as far as that goes. What do you think of with the addition of like Debo and some of those guys? Like, do you think that's kind of just evens it out a little bit, or do you think that maybe gives them an extra little boost?
It gives them a little bit of a boost. Obviously, I mean, when you sit down and you think about, especially offensively, especially with a Debo Samuels, that can kind of help alleviate on both facets. I mean, you look at now, it's almost like you pick your poison. Now you have a legitimate wide receiver too, because that was pretty much primarily been our issue. Because obviously, going into the preseason, you think to yourself, who the odds-on favorite to be wide receiver number 2 got traded to Philadelphia, and Jahan Dotson. So there's always been question marks at wide receiver 2 for the longest. Now you bring in someone that is your bona fide wide receiver 2. He's going to help, I think, even for the run game, also in the pass game. I definitely think he will be kind of Swiss Army knife. And it's funny because I always, when we acquired Curtis Samuel, I looked at him as the poor man's Debo Samuel, and now we actually got the version that we kind of wanted. Even though a little bit wear on the tire, but he's still a viable option. And then obviously the addition of Larry Tunsil, I think that's huge, especially for that offensive line. And that's another one where, like you said, they set up for a run. You look at, obviously, now, you get a guy like a Brandon Coleman out of his position. Now he doesn't have to play that left tackle. So now he can focus back on his. And then once, hopefully we'll be able to get Sam Cosmi back at a reasonable time. I'll hopefully at least by the stretch run, because I know he just got hurt in January. So you hopefully that we can at least have him, maybe like late November, potentially October, at least not October, but early to late November, December potentially. Hopefully he can come back, or even sooner if possible. But I do like the moves, and then obviously getting a guy like a Javon Kinlaw, I think that's a huge deal for this team. And they were just very smart with giving like these 1-year deals. I think that's one thing too, where I'm really liking how Adam Peters is doing this, where it's like a 1-year rental. And I think that's the success that I think a lot of people are going to mimic going forward. But and this is kind of one of those where this is unlike we talked about the Dan Snyder era, where there's really that, like, he was the king of getting the what I call the quote unquote sexy free agent pickups. But Adam Peters, what he's doing, and Josh Harris allowing Adam Peters to do his thing, allow him to do what he needs to do and pick up great value at the points. I know a lot of people looked at that Larry Tunsil, you gave up so many picks, but at the same token, you get a left tackle. Left tackle for a young quarterback is just as valuable as a running game, or even more valuable
Even
than a
better.
running game.
Yep.
So to me, what's GM for the LA Rams? F them picks. That's what
picks.
that's what I said
Yeah.
when we got that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Since when we got that Larry Tunsil deal, okay, yeah, forget it. Oh well.
Yeah. So the listeners know that I'm 100% I'm a defensive guy. I could care less about offense, which is weird that my favorite team has like Patrick Mahomes and kind of Andy Reid and doing that route. But I'm a defensive guy, so I've kind of always enjoyed Washington's defense. Even back to like the Ryan Kerrigan days. Uh, then you kind of even during some down times you were loading up on like the Jonathan Allens and Deron Payne and Sweats and kind of just loading up that defensive line. Now you're rocking with our boy Dorans. But I want to make sure I give a shout out because this was my favorite pick in this last draft. I'm glad he went to a team I don't hate, but Mike Sanderstill. The dude he's a dog.
Yes.
He's a Dan Quinn dude. And I actually think he kind of fits Washington like kind of quote unquote the old days, right? So I kind of just want to get your feel on like when they made that pick, how'd you feel? And then just being able to watch him ball out all year, like was it a surprise? Did fans like see this coming, or did you just kind of enjoy the journey of watching him just be a dog?
Loved it. I mean, especially when you get a Michigan man on the side. So that's another one. He comes from a winning tradition, and that's the thing about getting these type of guys. He's obviously won a national championship with Michigan and was instrumental, and even despite even winning the national championship, but just in Harbaugh's just development of this team. Like he was very instrumental in developing this defense. That defense was pro-like at Michigan, and you get one of those guys there, and he's became like a leader already. And that's the thing where you want a guy like him for sure. Like you said, he fits that mold, and that's one thing too when it's that secondary is improving. Obviously, you look at him, and then on the other side, with oh man, I can't believe I didn't have a brain fart.
Is it Forbes?
Lattimore. Yeah. He's well as well too. But yeah, you bringing him, and he's going to be a leader, obviously in the secondary. Obviously, like guys like Quan Martin. That is a true leader of this football team, and he's gonna be he's gonna be a fan favorite for years to come. But yeah, he's legit. He's a proven winner for sure.
And then when we it's draft season, is there someone maybe on top of your wish list that maybe you want them to take a look at? We know you're like us now. You got a quarterback, so you don't have to worry about weak quarterback class. So luckily, you don't need your quarterback. You got your franchise quarterback. Congratulations, Washington. Now, this is the next best part of building your team. Who is on your radar / wish list for the Commanders this year?
You know what's so funny? Because this team still has some needs at certain positions.
Yep.
But I transitioned from, we talked about the Michigan man. There are 2 Ohio State running backs that I'm like, if possible. Obviously, Quinshon Judkins, what he can do, and then also a guy in my backyard, and Travion Henderson. Those are some guys that I think could be lights out. I think they could be deadly in our offense. I'm not trying to say, like, I know people are going to be like, oh, you can't compare him to Saquon, but they could give us that type of impact. Not saying that they're going to run for 2,000 yards,
right?
But they could be a home run hitting running back that we potentially need.
Yeah, Brian Robinson ain't that.
Right, yeah, Brian Robinson, he can get you those tough yards, but these guys is 3 clouds and gone.
Yep.
Like they could be here and gone the next. They could be at that line of scrimmage and could be in Washington D.C. in the end zone and in an instant. And I think that's one thing too. If you couple that with already kind of that offense that we have now, that can be scary. That can really be a scary offense that I think defensive coordinators will lose sleep the week prior to us playing them. If we can get like that home run hitting type running back, one of those two, we're gonna be straight.
Yeah, Cliff will know how to use one of those too, right? Like, but you can say what you want about Kingsbury as a head coach, but that dude knows how to run an offense. So it's already going to be scary with what they have now on that offense. But you add any kind of home run hitter like that out of the draft, yeah, he's going to have too much fun thinking of things to do with that offense.
For sure. Yep.
And there's this class just in general at running back. Like it's, those two guys, obviously Genty, and the list goes on and on for running backs. But what's a young quarterback's best friend? We talk about it every single time. A run game, right? You touched earlier about, hey, you got a left tackle now. Why do you get a left tackle? To protect your young quarterback. Now you get a running back in a running game that also helps, your young quarterback. And Cliff Kingsbury with his quick hitting offense, he'll have some designed runs for Jaden Daniels to go along with said running back. So, yeah, man. I mean, sign me up for that. I mean, obviously, I want Denver to be in on one of those Ohio State running backs as well. But again, you can't be too picky, right? Like it's such a deep class where it's like, okay, well, you didn't get a chance to get the Ohio State guys. Well, now you're getting some other, guy who's going to be able to fit in just as much. So, as we kind of transition, do you guys have anything else you want to touch on with the Commanders?
Yeah, dude, just please take care of the Eagles for me. As a Chiefs fan, bro, like I would have loved to lose to you guys instead of getting embarrassed by them. All right, like whatever you do, take care of the Eagles and Cowboys, and then the Giants, I guess, but mostly Eagles, Cowboys.
I try. And I wanted just to be out. Yeah, we are allies in that when it comes to the Eagle hate for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
So I saw that you in a previous episode with somebody else, you guys had touched on Memphis firing their coach Taylor Jenkins. We had another big time coaching fire yesterday in the NBA with Michael Malone. We're huge Jokic fans, and Christian Brown, obviously a KU guy, and we're big Kansas fans as far as basketball goes. So we do follow the Nuggets quite a bit. He's actually a Lakers fan because of Kobe, and then I'm a Celtics fan because of Paul Pierce. But at the same time, we still pay attention to good teams. And Jokic right now is obviously, in my opinion, the best player in the NBA right now, just based on what he's able to do. Does this come as a surprise to you based on where they're at in the standings? What they won a championship not too long ago. Is this one more impactful than what maybe the Grizzlies did with Coach Jenkins?
Yeah, the timing is horrible. I mean, like you have 3 games left in the regular season. You don't fire a coach 3 games before the season end, and you are pretty much sandwiched in a playoff run. I mean, there's 7 teams that are that within like 2 games of each other. So you could be hosting the first round of playoffs, or you could essentially be in a playing game next week. It's just one of those things where it's like, I understand, yes, you're on a 4-game losing streak, but my goodness, you can turn this around. Like you could win. You could potentially win the Western Conference. Think about it. If you stay at 4, I think they're currently 5th as we're here now. So if you're off 4th, you beat the Clippers potentially. Then you play the Thunder. What if something happened with the Thunder? If an injury happened with them, you could potentially win that series against OKC and have yourself in the Western Conference Finals. It's not over. Like, I understand they probably was going to get rid of him at the end of the season, but as they were going to be eliminated at the end of the regular season.
He was actually going on a pretty good. Odd. He brought up some really good points there, bro, and we'll see if he gets back on here. 3 games left in the season. I mean, this is not normal. Like, this isn't normal behavior from an organization. I get maybe the rift between GM and head coach, but you do have, again, in my opinion, the best player in the NBA. You do have a good talent talented squad around Jokic as far as you know, Christian Brown, Jamal Murray when healthy, Michael Porter Jr. when healthy, Aaron Gordon. I mean, those are high leverage and high level guys. So, what do you think went into this?
Yeah, there there had to be a lot of uh, there had to be a rift that had been going for a while. It's not unusual to see coaches fired during a season. In my recent memory, you don't see coaches get fired this close to the playoffs. I know they've been on a little bit of a slide. There had been some complaints about like effort and defense and whatnot, but you're way too close to the games that matter to kind of pull a move like this. So we'll see. Maybe it'll be the spark the team needs, right? Like get out of this funk, go into the playoffs with kind of a new high, new bolt of energy type deal. So uh, it's weird to see something like this from a team like that, right? They've kind of been the standard or towards the top of the Western Conference for a few years now. So uh, the sports world's just all sports. The worlds are just becoming kind of cutthroat. We've mentioned on previous episodes where like NFL teams don't really care about their money on quarterback anymore. If they see a different one who's theirs due, they're going to do it, and who cares about the money? You're starting to see a little bit in the NBA with these coaches. Like Memphis was no different. Like they're in a playoff run. He got out, so it's a cutthroat world, and I think more now than ever, nobody's job is safe. Um, if there is one, it's probably Steve Kerr, right? He probably has the longest leash, but it's a cutthroat world, and it when you go through adversity, if you can't overcome it, it kind of seems like they're just going to kind of pull the rug out from under you, because that's what had to happen here, right? Like they're winning, they're in a playoff race. There had to be something going on internally, whether it was adversity. If he had any kind of like a fight with Jokic, we obviously know we're going to side with our 60-point triple-double guy, right? Like we're not going to run the organization to cater to him, but if push comes to shove, we're going to kind of evolve our world around him. So uh, sports are becoming players' leagues and cutthroat. So it's surprising. I think all will be forgiven if Denver makes another deep run, though, right? This will kind of just be an afterthought.
Well, and think about the Lakers, right? And what their coaches weren't doing terrible. Darvin Ham, but I don't think what he did warranted being fired. And then obviously the Suns hired, or was it the Pistons? One of the two. I think it was actually the Suns first, and then he went to the Pistons, and the Pistons fired him after like a year. And then now obviously the Pistons are one of the better, most improved team by far, but they're also one of the better teams with Cade Cunningham and those guys. So I guess it's kind of a year-to-year type thing. And you think of, not just the NBA, but then the coaching world in general, the NFL. Some of these guys still shouldn't be head coaches in the NFL, but yet here they are. As far as, we talked about the coaching hot seats per se for the NFL. We thought Brian Daboll was out last year. He's still there. So again, I don't think it really matters. They don't really care if you are winning. I mean, it's a win now type mentality that we're in.
And that's the crazy part. Like Denver was still winning now.
They were.
It's not like they were at the bottom of the standings or any. Like they were. Yes, they went on a little skid, but most teams do.
Yeah.
Unless you're talking about like those 70+ win teams like the Warriors and Bulls, where the whole season just went flawless. These teams go through ups and downs. So they were winning. They were still sitting okay in the standings. You still had the best player in the league. It is mind blowing. The Memphis one, I don't follow Memphis enough to know that can't be too easy of a job, but this one definitely surprises me because it's not like they were losing. They weren't on the outside looking in per se. So yeah, it's curious. I was seeing that they had one of the hottest assistant coaches. So maybe they made the move when they did, so he wouldn't even have the opportunity to talk to other teams, right? Maybe they salvage deal with the consequences now to protect them getting him as their head coach instead of letting him go elsewhere. So nobody really knows, but at the end of the day, I definitely didn't see this one. It wasn't on my bingo card.
And it looks like we have Chris back. So sorry, we weren't sure what happened, but we were able to kind of keep it going. But you were actually, and I was saying, as you got booted, that you're making a good point. So if you kind of want to pick up where you were at as far as Michael Malone and the situation that he's in, and kind of the Nuggets going forward for the 3 games and possible playoff run.
And the timing was just horrible. I mean, like you said, you're gonna go through ebb and flows of the season, and I understand. Yes, I know there was some tension between him and the general manager, and kind of one of the things where you didn't want to kind of pick a side, just get rid of both of them. But the timing of it is terrible. And then now your 3 game, like you can turn this thing around. Like I understand, yes, you had a 4-game losing streak, but you think to yourself, anything can happen. It's the playoffs. If you get that home court advantage and you play the Clippers, you can potentially beat them. What if you go to OKC and something happens with OKC? They could be an injury away, God forbid, where if they have an injury, you could potentially go to the Western Conference Finals potentially, and and what's the point of this? And I think now you bring in, having an interim coach. I don't think what is he going to do essentially to kind of help this situation. He might add somewhat of a spark, but I mean, at this point, guys probably if guys have already given up already, you think they're gonna start caring and giving a damn now? They probably think to themselves, okay, I'm maybe 2 weeks away from Cancun. It's terrible. Like it's
yeah.
no, it's yeah.
And you got to think about some of the historic games that Jokic had over the last week or so, almost 2 weeks. It was 60-point triple-double, and you're still losing. That might be a warning sign that something's not going right. And then I think the other night he still had like a 35-point, and it was still another triple-double in a loss. But we were talking about, you have Jokic, you have Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon, Russell Westbrook. This isn't a terrible roster, right? Like something really did go wrong, and I'm not sure that it makes any difference of firing him, after the season, because at this rate you're probably going to be a one and done in the playoffs anyways. This Oklahoma City team is really good, but you're not obviously matched up with them first. But what the interim coach isn't going to just come in and wave magic dust. And I guess maybe it could. Maybe it does spark them, but do you think that Memphis or Denver right now would be more appealing with Ja Morant or Nikola Jokic?
Oh, it's got to be. I just think the Memphis situation is so topsy-turvy, and
still have him
then,
there, or is he kind of frozen
like
up?
you said, Jokic, historic night, 61. I'm here. Okay. Can you hear me now? What? You guys hear me now?
I think he's kind of cutting in and out again. So
I think we're losing him.
I think we're losing him a little bit more. I'm gonna see that. Let's see if I can try to slow it down a little bit. But I think
I would think the Denver job would be more appealing. Not to take anything away from Ja Morant's talents, but that seems like a whole extra job or like job requirement. Maybe not to babysit, but maybe a few more headaches along the way. Just given all the extracurriculars that surround him. Hell of a basketball player though. Like I would love to coach him, like straight basketball, but I would think the Nuggets would be more appealing. They're just a couple years off a championship. They have some young talent. They obviously have Jokic. With that said, I don't think either one would be a bad job. But if you had to toss your hat in the ring for one of them, I would pick Denver.
yeah, I do agree. As Chris had again, sorry for the technical difficulties as we kind of start wrapping up here. But it does bring up a good question, because obviously these are going to be a couple of the hotter openings as far as what they do, and you don't know what other jobs are going to come open at this rate. So I do like the Denver job, and I think not necessarily just based on the one instance with John Morant. That's still a good roster too. They still have some good players, but I think right now with Jokic being the best player in the NBA, I think that gives you more of something to kind of build around. How much longer does Jokic have? You just don't know. But it'll be an interesting offseason. So we want to thank Chris for joining us tonight. Obviously, some technical issues here towards the end, but this was a really fun episode, a really good conversation with him. Go find him on Instagram, Couch Coach Live. I will make sure to tag him in the post so you guys know where to find him. We'd love to have him back on here. It was a great show. Now that we know he's a Commander fan, we'd love to get him back on throughout the season to kind of get his perspective on year 2 for Dan Quinn and Jaden Daniels and those guys. So come find us on X at Shovick Sports. Find us on Instagram. We're getting closer. I think we just went over 800 followers on Instagram. And then we're really making a push here on X here the last couple of days. So come find us on our social medias. And next week, actually, we have a special episode Friday. We do. We have a baseball episode coming to you guys Friday with Kenny the Sports Guy. Kenny's really going to bring a lot of energy to the show, talk baseball, just kind of get his perspective on the first couple of weeks of the season, Cubs, Royals, and all things in between. So we can't wait to do that. Our schedule's filling up again. We already got guys booked into May. So we got Drew Code Sports, and then Answer the Call, who we were on with last night, and Matt, OC News 365. We're all going to get together the first week of May, and we're going to do our first AFC West roundtable. We were able to get that kind of rounded up last night. So again, we got a lot of big things coming up here shortly. And again, special episode Friday, and then we're going to move on, and we have some guests lined up. And then as we get closer to the draft, we'll be getting more people on to talk about their teams. So again, thank you all for tuning in tonight, and we will talk to you guys next week.